Hey everybody, today we are going to talk about the best lens hood that you can buy for the Fuji X100F. Before we get started, just want to remind you, be sure and check out my podcast. It's every single week. It's called Photobomb. It's a fantastic podcast about all things photography. It's a lot of fun. I guarantee you'll enjoy it. You can find it anywhere that podcasts are found. And also be sure and join my group on Facebook, Pro Photo Talk with Boo Ray Perry, where we talk about all things photography. And, well, we joke around quite a bit too. It's a good community, and you should check it out, Pro Photo Talk with Boo Ray Perry. And finally, everything that I talk about, doesn't matter what I'm talking about, everything I talk about, whether it's for the Fuji X100F or it's for my Canon gear and my professional gear, all the equipment that I use and own and make use of on a daily basis is all on my website, and there is a link in the description. So if you just go down to the description and click that link, you'll be able to find everything that I talk about and get it to it easily and check it out for yourself. All right, let's talk about lens hoods. I have several lens hoods for the Fuji X100F, and I change them all the time. This video, if you're looking for a video where I'm going to come out and say this is absolutely the number one best lens hood you should have, then this is not going to be the best video for you. Because the truth is that every lens hood you can get for the Fuji X100F has its pros and its cons, and so does not having a lens hood at all. So really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about each option that you have, and then you can kind of decide for yourself what's the best option for you. Okay, the first option is no lens hood at all. Just having a cap on your camera and walking around like this. The pro to this, there's a couple. First of all, this is the smallest profile that you can have with your camera. And one of the great things about the Fuji X100F is that it has such a small profile. It is so short front to back. And when you're doing street photography especially, having a small profile makes you less obtrusive. For some reason, I think that when people see this, it's not as scary as when they see something with more of a protrusion coming off the front of the camera. So a lot of times when I'm doing street photography, I just carry my camera like this. Now the downside is you feel a little vulnerable having the lens open, so you want to put a lens cap on it. Well, then every time you want to take a picture, you've got to take the lens cap off, and now you've got to hold it in your hand, or you've got to put it in your pocket. So that's kind of just one more little thing that you might set down or you might lose. You don't have to do that if you have a lens hood on your camera, because you don't have to have a lens cap at all. You can put a filter on the front of the camera and use that as your lens cap, but there's a chance that you're going to touch the front, you're going to smear it up, now you've got to clean it. So there's pros and their cons, but I find myself going back to this a lot. I find myself putting a lens hood on for a while, and then I'll go back to this, because ultimately one of the reasons we buy this camera is that we love the way that it looks, and this is when it is at its most beautiful, and we love the size of it, and we love that it's truly pocketable. You have to have a big pocket, but you can put this in your pocket when you've got it, this way with no lens hood on it. So that's option number one, and I would say maybe 50% of the time, at least, I actually don't have a lens hood on my camera. All right, so let's take a look at lens hood number two. Now, to put a lens hood on the camera, you have to screw off this little front right here. This little ring. Oh, one more. Okay, so there it is. This is probably the most popular lens hood. Fuji makes one specifically for the camera, but you can also find them aftermarket, and that's what you're going to find when you go to the link in my description is the aftermarket one. And it just screws right onto the front of the camera. And you get some. It comes in black and silver. My first one was silver, and then my second one was black, just because I thought, well, it'd be interesting to have the black, work with the black on the camera, see what that looks like. So one of the advantages of this lens hood is that you can just pop whoop, that's unscrewing it. You can just pop. It's a good advantage. I can't get to it. There you go. You can just pop the front part off, and then you've still got this part, and you can put a filter on it. So if you want to put a filter on your camera, you can put a filter on here like this. Get on there. There we go. You can put a filter on the front of your camera and then still put the lens hood on. Right? So this is actually really, really cool, because the other lens hood I'm going to show you won't do this. Now, the downside is, and this is a big downside, if you use this flash at all, this will block the flash. So now if you're going to use your flash, you have to pop this off. And now you have this in your hand or in your pocket. Same thing with the lens hood. With the cap. So now what am I going to do with this, right? It's one more thing you got to worry about. So that's kind of a downside. The fact that it blocks the flash can also be bad because you don't necessarily remember that it blocks the flash, and then you take the picture and you look at the picture and you realize that the bottom half of the picture doesn't seem to be being lit very well, and it's because this is blocking the flash. It also sticks out further, so it blocks the viewfinder a little bit. Now, what's the upside? Well, the upside is it's the largest one that you can have. It's bigger. It makes the front of your camera bigger. When you take the camera and you put it in your hand is going to go right here, no problem. It gives you a nice sturdy, something to grab a hold of. And it's a very popular lens hood, and I use it a lot. Another downside, though, is that because this is bigger, right, if you have to change your aperture, which is usually quite often, you're going into a little slot here with your fingers, look. See, so you're holding the camera here naturally, and you have to kind of go down into here and kind of look for your little aperture ring to change it. And it seems like a small thing, but when you don't have anything on your camera and you're using it in its regular mode, when you put your hand on the camera, since you can't grab the front here, your hand automatically rests back here on the aperture ring. So it's just natural when you're holding this camera just to hold it by the aperture ring. So then when you want to change aperture, you can easily do it. But once you put that big lens hood on, you tend to grab it by the hood. And then now changing the aperture is an extra little step. And, oh, where is it? I got to find it. So I feel like you lose a little bit of the fluidity of shooting with this camera when you've got that big lens hood on. That being said, it's a great lens hood. You can keep it on all the time. You don't have to have a lens cap. Your camera is always ready to go. But it does have a few drawbacks. And then we get to this lens hood. This lens hood really only has one major drawback, and the major drawback is that it looks kind of weird. I know that seems like an odd drawback, and why would that matter? Well, it matters because we love this camera, partly because it is such a beautiful camera, and when you put this lens hood on this camera, it makes it look a little bit weirder. Now, from the side, it kind of looks okay, that's all right, but from the front, suddenly it just, I don't know, it looks kind of weird. However, you do get some benefits from this that you don't get from the round one, namely the fact that it's not wider. So while you still will grab this maybe when you're using it, your thumb and your finger are right next to where you want them to be, right there. So that's not really a problem. So I think that for ease of use, this is a better lens cap. I think it does a good job of protecting the lens. I think that it keeps it just a little bit smaller than the other lens cap. So overall, between the two lens caps, between the two lens hoods, I really think this is the better one. But the drawback is that it doesn't look as good. It just doesn't look as good. It also doesn't feel as good in the hand as the other one because the other one is just a little bit wider. But if you're just talking about something being practical, this really is, I think, probably the best one of the two. Now, there's a third one, and I don't own it, and it's square, which I think is really kind of cool. It really gives a different look to the camera when you put that square lens hood on. I've thought about getting it, but I haven't found them at a price that I was really happy purchasing it for, because you got to remember, I don't use them all the time, and I'm not going to pay a whole lot of money for a lens hood that I only use a third of the time, if that, whereas I picked up these pretty cheap. But when I'm in my I just want to be practical and do the best thing, this is a lens hood that I use. When I'm in my, I just want something that feels good in my hand, this is the lens hood that I use. And when I'm in my, I want to be as unobtrusive as possible, and I want this camera to look beautiful, I don't use the lens hood at all. So there you go. Those are your options. Those are the three options that I have when I use my camera. And it's weird that I have these options and I use them all the time. But it's one of the things that I've found about this camera that's different than every camera I've ever owned is that I enjoy accessories. I enjoy looking for things to put on it to make it more beautiful or make it easier to use. And that doesn't stop when it comes to the lens hood. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments about lens hoods that you use, etc., be sure and list them below. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you've had. Oh, one last thing. You'll notice that I didn't talk at all about which one does the best job of blocking the sun, which is what a lens hood is supposed to do. There's a reason for that. The truth is you really don't need a lens hood with this camera. Because the camera has such a short profile, if you're out shooting and you find yourself in a situation where you're getting some sun flare on your lens, all you have to do is just block it with your hand. All you got to do is just throw a hand up. And it's pretty easy to block. It's not like a big camera. You can shoot with it one-handed. So a lens hood really isn't that mandatory for blocking the sun. With this camera, a lens hood is really more about making it so that you don't have to have a lens cap on the camera and making it so that it's easier to hold the camera. And that's why I didn't talk about the actual functionality of the lens hood. I think very few people buy a lens hood for this camera because they're really worried about sun flare. I could be wrong, and if I am, be sure and comment in the comments below. All right, thanks for watching. More videos on the way, and get out there and do some shooting. Have a good one.